Hey friends, welcome to Unpacking the Mass. Today we're going to be looking at the readings for the 17th Sunday in Ordinary Time. These readings, especially the Gospel in particular, are some of my favorites. When I tell my testimony, these verses from the Gospel really are kind of at the center of what I use to share my journey to the Catholic faith. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. I'm really excited about that because it goes to the reality of the kingdom of heaven being a treasure hidden in a field that you must sell out in order to receive. And I love this picture of this because oftentimes people have this mindset that the kingdom of heaven just fits nicely and neatly into your already existing life with your already existing ambitions and goals and everything like that. And just Jesus is sort of there to enhance your life. That's not how it's described at all by God in the Bible. And my friends, what we're looking at isn't something that enhances your life and just helps you get to where you want to go, but this completely redefines your life. Now, maybe you're the kind of person who has bought into faith because you feel like, well, that's just what I need to do to be a good person or whatever, or this is a way to help me center myself or to serve my life or what. There's going to be a lot of benefits to your faith, no question. But if that's a means to an end, right? If your faith is a means to an end, then you're missing out. No, your faith is everything, my friends. And that's what we're going to talk about today. But it all goes to this understanding of what do you really want from God? What do you want from God? Is God here to just give you things that you've already decided you want, or is God what you really want? And we're going to dig into that right away with our first reading from the book of 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 5 and then 7 through 12. This is an incredible text dealing with King Solomon. And it goes like this. The Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream at night. God said, "Ask something of me, and I will give it to you." Solomon answered, "O Lord my God, you have made me your servant, king, to succeed my father David. But I am a mere youth, not knowing at all how to act. I serve you in the midst of the people whom you have chosen, a people so vast that it cannot be numbered or counted. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding heart to judge your people and to distinguish right from wrong. For who is able to govern this vast people of yours?" The Lord was pleased that Solomon made this request. So God said to him, "Because you have asked for this, not for a long life for yourself, nor for riches, nor for the life of your enemies, but for understanding so that you may know what is right, I do as you requested. I give you a heart so wise and understanding that there has never been anyone like you up to now, and after you there will come no one equal to you." If you could ask God for one thing, what would it be? That's kind of a fun question to deal with, but the reality is we get to ask God for things all the time. What are we asking him for? When you're praying to the Lord and you're bringing your intentions and requests before God, what's the center of that request? Is it things that have to do with your own life and things that you're concerned about for yourself? Or is it things related to how you can best serve God? This is what we see in this text with Solomon. I mean, imagine that. The truth is this: you're going to get from God what you ultimately desire the most. Now, does that mean, hey, I ultimately desire the lottery winnings or the job of my dreams or to, be 6 inches taller or whatever? No, friends, we think too much in terms of these specific things. What God wants to show us is it's more about the categories of what you are pursuing in your life and in your heart. And let's break that down, because all of those other things are simply means to an ends as well. More money, more stuff, more physical, whatever you're trying to do. All of those things are a means to an end that satisfies the desires of our heart related to our flesh and our worldly life. It's just different things. So when we ask God for, I just need more money, or I need a better job, or a bigger house, or a better car, what I'm really saying is, God, I need more things that cater to my worldly needs or my worldly wants. And God says, okay, at the end of the day, if that's what you desire, that's where your heart's going to go. That's going to be your treasure. It's probably where you're going to spend your time. And in the end, ultimately, you will receive what is commensurate with that, which ultimately, let's face it, is going to be separation from God. Because ultimately, if that's what you are pursuing more than anything else, there comes a point in your life where that's going to depart from God's plan for you. And you're going to have to make those choices. Now, I'm not saying that all of these material things are inherently sinful or bad, not at all. But what I am saying is this, remember, this is the point. What is the pursuit of your heart, the pursuit of your life? What is the trajectory that you have placed yourself on? What is the ultimate treasure for you? Because if you point yourself in that direction and you go, you'll get there. And in the end, if the answer to that question is anything other than Jesus Christ, then eventually you will receive that ultimately. But if instead you point your heart at Christ and he becomes your treasure, and you say to God, I want you. I want things that are going to help me in my holiness. And for Solomon, it was, I need the ability to govern and know things wisely. I need that wisdom so I can do what you've called me to do. God will grant that. And that's exactly what God will do for us. If our heart's desire is to serve the Lord and we ask God to provide us with the things that we need to do his will, friends, we will receive that. We'll receive that. The problem is we don't always do that. We often don't always do that. Maybe I should speak for myself. I often don't always do that. So we have to recalibrate ourselves and remember that this is what pleases God. When you ask him for things that ultimately will help you to fulfill the role that he has for you in your life, that's what we should be seeking. That's our treasure, my friends. Let's look at our responsorial psalm. Lord, I love your commands. I have said, O Lord, that my part is to keep your words. The law of your mouth is to me more precious than thousands of gold and silver pieces. Lord, I love your commands. Let your kindness comfort me, according to your promise to your servants. Let your compassion come to me that I may live, for your law is my delight. Lord, I love your commands. For I love your command more than gold, however fine. For in all your precepts I go forward. Every false way I hate. Lord, I love your commands. Wonderful are your decrees, therefore I observe them. The revelation of your words sheds light, giving understanding to the simple. Lord, I love your commands. I mean, that's really where we're aiming for, right? To not follow God's law begrudgingly and out of fear of hell, okay? But because we love God and because we love God's commands, how can we do that? Because we understand that God loves us and that God knows everything. Therefore, whatever God commands us to do is going to be consistent with his love for us. So just as you might tell a young child, hey, don't play in traffic, that child has to make a decision. Do I desire to obey my parents out of fear of what happens if I don't? If that's their motivation, then as soon as you're looking the other way, they're going to head right back out there, right? And boom, they could be in trouble. But if they recognize that you are guiding them because you love them, then whatever you tell them to do is ultimately what's best for them, and you've told them don't play in traffic, then even when you're not watching them, they're not going to play in traffic. See, how do you approach God? One's based out of love of God, and one's based out of fear of the consequences. Friends, the higher way than not disobeying God out of fear of consequences is not disobeying God because you love what he commands you to do. See, when you love God, then you know that you're going to do what he says. So we want to make sure we're following God and his commands because we love them and we love him. And then it's not going to feel like a chore to obey the Lord. You know, that's important. All right, let's look at our second reading from Romans 8:28 through 30. This all ties together so beautifully today. Brothers and sisters, we know that all things work for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. For those he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, so that he might be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. And those he predestined, he also called. And those he called, he also justified. And those he justified, he also glorified. So let's just work through this because this is one of those verses people just, they grab a hold of, but they don't grab a hold of all of it, and that can get you in trouble. We know that all things work for the good, okay? That's great. But read the rest of it. For those who love God and are called according to his purpose. That's the key right there. When you love God and you're following his purpose for your life, then he's not going to send you on a detour. He's going to keep you focused in a straight line towards what he has for you, and it's going to be for your good. Even the difficult things, even the tough things, even the sacrificial things that we must endure to receive the treasure, right? That works towards your good. See, when we get to the gospel, and I'm really itching to get there, and we talk about what it means to sell out to receive the kingdom of God, right? To sacrifice everything to follow him, that is working toward your good. That's what I'm talking about. It doesn't mean that you can isolate every bad incident in your life and then ultimately go, oh, what are you talking about? That's kind of how people get in trouble with this verse. For example, somebody might say, well, this bad thing that happened to me, this tragic thing that happened to me, or this horrible thing that happened to me, God, you're telling me that you wanted that to happen and that's for my good? Sometimes it helps to take a step back and look at this from a 30,000 foot view rather than on the ground. Okay? Because yes, you could technically say all things work to the good, but it doesn't help if in the moment that that's happening, you're trying to discern what is good. Because those things can be not good at the time, right? Those things can be ultimately not good. And you go, wait a minute, there's a disconnect here. But when you're able to unplug that meaning from that specific thing in terms of it's not a judgment on whether that thing is good or not. And that's what I think I'm trying to say here. We sometimes get hung up on that because we think then that what the Bible's saying here is that everything that happens to us is good. Okay? It's not what it says. He doesn't say we know that all things are good and work toward the good. It's not what he said. He said all things work for good. That's different. That's different. An analogy I'll use sometimes with this is, when you go to the gym and you work out and you get sore and you injure yourself as part of that at times, you go, that's not good. But it works toward the good because it helps you to become stronger. It helps you to recover better than you were before you started. That thing in and of itself, if you isolate it, you go, is it good to be injured in the gym or to be sore? You could argue, no, it's not because it hurts. But when you step back and you look at it in the context of what you're trying to do and what's the overall plan here, then you can say, yeah, that's working for my good or towards my good, but that doesn't make that thing good. Very important distinction that I think people often fail to grasp. Because again, we're not saying, and God's not saying, that every single thing that happens to you is good. If that were the case, then, we'd be in trouble because not everything that happens to us is good, right? But it works for our good if we love God and are called according to his purpose. That's so important. That's so important to remember, right? And what is the purpose? You say, what's the purpose? Here it is. It tells you this. To be conformed to the image of his son. For those he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his son. Everything that's happening to us, this good that we're working toward with all these things that are even, some of them are bad, is to help us become more like Jesus, to help us become conformed to the image of Christ, to be more holy, to be more like God. But here's the beautiful thing. God has predestined that this can happen, right? Those he foreknew, people get hung up on these verses too oftentimes between the whole debate of like predestination or free will, right? Some Catholics will even say, well, we don't believe in predestination. No, we do. We just believe in it differently than the way others do. We absolutely believe in predestination. But check this out. God's predestination is based on his foreknowledge of what we're going to do with our free will. Now, does that mean that we're in the driver's seat? No. But it does mean, and here's the key, that God incorporates our free decisions into his predetermined plan. Now, how can that work? Well, when you figure that out, let me know. Because here's the thing. Lots of things are going to be beyond our ability to grasp and understand, and this is one of them. This is why we just have to trust God, right? That as we operate in our freedom, which we're called to do, to choose and love and serve God, God has predestined that when we do that according to his will, everything's going to work towards our good of being conformed to the image of his son. Beautiful. It's awesome stuff. All right, let's look at our gospel today, my friends. Some of you might have to think about that one for a while. Why is that helpful to think about real quick before we do the gospel? Because you have to remember that God's got this. I know that's a real deep theological concept that I just said right there. God's got this. But that's important for us because as we sacrifice and suffer and work through all these things, we can have that assurance that we're not going to go through all this stuff for nothing. That God's got a plan that will succeed if we stick with it. All right? That's huge. So do that. All right, here we go. Gospel today from Matthew 13, 44 through 52. Jesus said to his disciples, here we go, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure buried in a field, which a person finds and hides again, and out of joy goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant searching for fine pearls. When he finds a pearl of great price, he goes and sells all that he has and buys it. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net thrown into the sea, which collects fish of every kind. When it is full, they haul it ashore and sit down to put what is good into buckets. What is bad, they throw away. Thus it will be at the end of the age. The angels will go out and separate the wicked from the righteous and throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Do you understand all these things? They answered, yes. And he replied, then every scribe who has been instructed in the kingdom of heaven is like the head of a household who brings from his storeroom both the new and the old. Awesome. All right, my friends. You know, your faith needs to be the most valuable thing that you can possibly own. This treasure in the field thing. Again, I talk about this a lot in my testimony, if you've ever watched that. Because to me, this is what I experienced. Coming into the Catholic faith, I discovered this beautiful treasure of the church. But in order for me to receive that, I had to get rid of a bunch of stuff, man. I had to sell a bunch of stuff. For me, that was like sacrificing my career and my income and all of these things in order to get that, because I couldn't have them both. And people say to me sometimes like, oh, Keith, wow, you know, so cool that you were willing to do that to be Catholic, and great. But what I often reflect on is, why did I not do that sooner sometimes? But I also reflect on, that's not just about being Catholic. That's about discipleship. That's about what it means to follow Jesus. And that applies to you whether you're a Protestant or whether you're a Catholic, no matter what. And you can't think to yourself, well, because I'm already Catholic, then I guess I'm good. No, this is a continual process of discovering God's plan for your life and what it means to truly be someone who's in his kingdom and what it means to have that treasure. So you might have been born and raised Catholic. You're not off the hook here. Okay, you've still got to sell all your stuff and follow Jesus. Now, am I saying literally? I don't know. Maybe you are, but I think you get the point that I'm making. This is about discipleship. And it doesn't matter where you start from, right? I started as a Protestant. Some people start as an atheist. Some people start as a cradle Catholic who's just trying to get more, serious about their faith. The process is the same. You make this discovery of God's plan for you and the walking with Jesus, the relationship with God, the kingdom of heaven, and you want to incorporate that into your life. You want that to become your life. You want to receive that. What does it take? Can you just add it to a busy life already with your own ambitions and your own goals and your own value system and your own situation? People try that all the time, don't they, my friends? Oh yeah, I've got my life, and there's probably a lot of things that are just part of my life that are inconsistent with the teaching of the church and with Christian faith, but I'm just going to throw God in here, and the parts that make sense to me, I'll incorporate, but the parts that offend me or challenge me to change, I'm just going to ignore them. I'm here to blow that up, my friends. See, we can't live like that. Ultimately, we're faced with this decision, just like Solomon was. What do you want from God? What are you seeking? If you answer that question incorrectly, then you're just basically not going to get anything from God. But if you answer it correctly, you'll be given everything from God. Here's what I mean. If you say to God, well, I just want you to do what I want. I want to have everything the way that I've decided. God, can you get on board with that? God's going to say to you, nope, doesn't work that way. And you'll wind up with a shallow shell of a religious experience, but with no power, right? Just like Jesus said about the people around him. He said, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. That's not what we're looking for. That's not what God wants for you. That's not what you've been predestined to do. That's not conforming yourself to the image and likeness of God's Son. No, my friends. What we need to do is say, God, it all begins and ends with you and your kingdom. That's my treasure. So what I want from you, Lord, is for you to help me get there. What I want from you, Lord, is for you to give me the courage I need and the strength that I need and the wisdom that I need to sell everything that I have to buy that field or to buy that pearl. And the beautiful thing is that if we do that, as hard as that can be, because don't get me wrong, I am not saying that's going to be easy. It wasn't easy for me. And it's certainly a lot more difficult for many others than it was for me. But everything that we have to suffer through, everything that we have to sacrifice and miss will work. Even the bad things will work toward the good of God's plan being fulfilled in our lives and conforming us to the Son. Friends, that's important, right? Because there is this day coming, read the rest of the gospel, when that net is going to be collected and we're going to get sorted, right? Like Jesus was saying, like a net thrown into the sea, which collects fish of every kind. And there's going to be the good bucket and the bad bucket. And we're going to get sorted out. And the ones who have searched for God above all things, who've sold out and bought that treasure and received that kingdom, they're going to be brought into the kingdom ultimately in heaven. Whereas the ones who saw God as a means to their end and went after their own selves, friends, they're going to be separated, thrown into the fiery furnace where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Ooh, that's harsh. Correct, it is. And what are you going to do? See, just because it's harsh doesn't mean that you can make it not true. You have a harsh reality that you're faced with. The question then becomes, what are you going to do? And some people say, well, I'm just going to turn my back on that and walk away because I don't like it. Okay. Well, you just pretty much solidified your place in that bad bucket of fish, right? Or you can say, yeah, this is going to be tough and maybe it's hard, it's harsh, but man, I want to be with Jesus. I want to have that treasure. Well, okay. Now we're getting somewhere, right? Now we're getting somewhere. And here's the thing. This isn't an invitation to some miserable life where everything stinks. Too many people act like that's what it means to follow Jesus and to be a Christian. All right, well, if I do what you're saying, Keith, and I follow God, now I got to give up, this, that, whatever this, and life's just going to be boring and miserable, and it's just going to be awful. Nope, that's a lie from the devil. That's the lie that you have bought into because you're looking at the culture instead of Christ. The reality is you're being invited into a life that has incredible meaning and purpose and is awesome. That's why the psalmist can say, Lord, I love your commands. Not, Lord, these commands stink, but I'll do them anyway. No, if that's the way that you view this, then you're just wrong. You've got it backwards. Realize how much you're loved by God. Realize that He wants your good. He wants truth for you. He wants your fulfillment. He says, I've come that you'd have life and have it abundantly. That's what He wants for you. And the only way that you can receive that is through Him. But your problem is you keep thinking it's the opposite. You keep thinking that following Him is going to lead you away from that abundant life and into misery. So you keep going the other way. That's wrong. Turn around, repent, and come to Jesus. Put your faith and trust in Him, obey His commands, love His commands, and love Him. And then, man, you'll realize that what you receive from Him is better than any garbage this world has to offer. Notice that when Jesus is talking about the kingdom of heaven, He likens it to a treasure hidden in a field, not a box of rattlesnakes. He likens it to a pearl of great price, not a pile of, broken glass. It's the best, my friends. It's the best. But it's going to require everything to be set aside so that you can dig that up Now, keep in mind this too, that treasure, where is it? It's buried in the field. Just because you do that doesn't mean that it's there sitting right there for you. You have to dig, right? I talk about this a lot in my testimony because just because you realize what it is doesn't mean that you don't have to work for it. But I love how it says that out of joy, he goes and sells it and buys that field. It's not, oh man, I got to let go of all this stuff and then I got to do all this digging. No, it's like, this is so awesome because what's underneath the ground here is this incredible treasure. And I'm going to have to sweat. I'm going to have to work. I'm going to have to toil a little bit to get to that. But once I get there, oh my goodness, I can spend the rest of my life and eternity to come sorting through that treasure, realizing how amazing it is. That's how I look at my faith, you guys. The Catholic faith for me has been this incredible treasure that, yes, I sold a lot, dug a lot. I'm still digging. But man, when I look at what's in that treasure chest, it's almost like every day I find a new piece of it. And I'm like, that's really cool. Oh, the rosary, that's amazing. Oh, the liturgy of the hours, that's incredible. Oh, the Mass, incredible. These saints, amazing. This particular devotion, incredible. This teaching of this person in the church, amazing. Friends, it's truly an incredible gift that we can receive, this treasure buried in the field. But many people miss it because they don't want to sell what they have to buy the field. Friends, don't let that be you. Whatever it is right now in your life that God is saying to you, look, it's either this or me. Choose him. Just like Solomon, God's asking you, what is it that you want from me? He wants you to ask him, what is it going to be? My challenge to each of us today is that we only ask him for things that are going to help us grow in the knowledge and truth of Christ. We're only going to ask for things that are going to help us be conformed more to the likeness of his Son. And the beautiful thing is when we do, we can have the assurance that that's exactly what will happen, my friends. God has predestined it to be that way. Awesome stuff, my friends. Oh, I'm so fired up. Hey, if this has been meaningful and helpful to you, yes, of course, I'm going to ask you to share it and give us a good review and all that stuff. But I also would love for you to send me an email. Let me know how Unpacking the Mass has impacted your life. And I want to thank those of you that have done that. It's been really awesome. And I want to thank also those of you who've let me know about the small group Bible studies you've been doing with Unpacking the Mass. I heard from somebody from South Africa just last week who gets together in their church and does this. I'm just so blown away by that. That's my ultimate mission and vision for this thing, is that not only would it be something that we can do as individuals, but that we could come together in groups and study the readings together so that we're all collectively growing in grace and knowledge and application so that our faith explodes with holiness and power. Friends, thanks so much for being here on Unpacking the Mass. I look forward to being back here with you next week. Take care and God bless.